With rapid change on the horizon, smart budgeting is more essential than ever before. Dr Steve Enticott from CIA Tax joins me to outline more about this. Dr Steve, there is a lot going on in the economy at the moment. Take us through how we should be budgeting more effectively in order to sort of withstand some of the shakes.
Absolutely. So, one of the Dr Steve things I like to do is I go away every January, which is the end of our, or start of our calendar year, and I plan the year ahead. So I already know what I'll be doing for the year ahead. It's already one of the things, and budgeting's a bit like that too. You know what resources you're going to have and what expenses are going to be there, and you can put a bit of a budget plan together. I always tell people to have a budget, put a budget plan together, whether it be a macro one where you just have a certain amount of money coming in each week that you spend, and you don't exceed those limits. We've got the Ticker Money Guide that can help people with that, or a really detailed micro budget where people know exactly what they're spending and all that. I'm more the macro rather than micro. But if you're micro, go for it. But what we want to talk about is budgeting in 2025. If you'd gone away in January and you'd worked out your plans for the whole year ahead, like Dr Steve does, bang. We get to March, April, and things have changed. They've changed drastically. Yeah. We've got the Trump, we've got the tariffs, we've got new US presidential elections, we've got the whole world, tossing and turning in new directions.
Yeah, yeah.
So change is good. I think it was Mike Tyson or someone, that certainly the quote's been attributed to him, is everyone's got a plan until you're punched in the face. So we've been punched in the face, Mike. We really have. My plans have been a little bit
the stock market,
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we've been, and these events are called black swans, if you like. Yeah. Nissan Taleb wrote a great book called Anti-Fragile. I encourage every single person to read it, because it actually teaches you to, what I want to teach you today, is to know that these punches in the face, or these black swans, or whatever we want to call it, are going to happen, and to be ready for them when they do happen, and to have a new plan for the what ifs.
So you've sat down at the start of the year, you're looking ahead, you're going, this is great, this is how it's all going to work out. But how often should people be reviewing that plan in order to sort of take stock and find out how they should navigate these things?
Yeah, so when I go away, I do my budgets and everything plans for January, and I'll check in on those at least once a month, if not more often.
Yeah.
Just to make sure you're ticking off the things you need to be ticking off and you're making progress. So review is on a need basis, but when these big punches in the face come along, everything gets reviewed immediately and straight away again. So review is probably based on progress and events. When the external events happen, like we're seeing, all our budgets have been thrown out. We've got a cycle going on at the moment. The economic cycle's about to change. We now fear a world recession. The markets are predicting that. So interest rates are going to come down. So actually my loan repayments aren't going to be as high. Okay, but then, inflation may come back in and my expenses might go. So you have to have that fluctuality in place to say, well, okay, if there is a black swan event, the first thing the central banks like to do is to cut interest rates. We're talking about it in Australia. We've gone from one, maybe no more for the rest of the year, to actually there might be another two.
Correct.
Another two. So actually, if your budget is now looking a little bit better, if your loan repayments are going to come down a little bit.
Every cloud a silver lining. But let's talk a little bit about some of the key indicators, or perhaps the trends that we should look out for when adjusting our financial plans or keeping an eye on.
Yeah, well, income can be the big one, isn't it? You go into work. A good friend of mine went into work on last week and got told, goodbye, we're merging with another company, your role's not there.
Yep.
Okay, so his budget's now out the window. All right, so these events are going to happen. All right, and that's when we need to really look at it and go strategically, what am I going to do? But you should have thought about this when you were putting your plan together. All right, so this is what I really want to encourage about. Adapting to change is knowing what to do when change occurs in advance. So maybe expenses that you weren't predicting, the car's now done a $17,000 diff sensor or something
Health,
like that.
Whatever, doctors.
And all of a sudden you're increasing your mortgage to pay off the European mechanic to get your car back on the road, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Change is normal. So we have to think about change happening before change happens. All right, we've talked about it many times with Ticker Money Guides and other things. You've got to have that emergency fund.
Yes.
So we've had a big change. I've had my emergency fund in place. Fortunately, I didn't have to dip into it because I had some reserves, but I can tell you those reserves were completely dwindled over the last couple of months.
I'll bet.
All right, but the emergency fund stayed intact. If something else had gone wrong, then we would have needed to dip into that emergency fund again. So it's before change happens, the only way you can adapt to it is to be prepared for it and accept that you will need to adapt. Having that emergency fund having those reserves, the buffer in place, is the key to coping to change when change comes along.
And we're talking about a financial foundation here, and that's
Absolutely.
something you definitely speak about a lot, which is great. So why is it more important? It seems like an obvious question, but why is it so important to have that foundation, that emergency fund?
Because when you're forced into making decisions, it's never a good outcome.
No.
If you're forced to sell something, if you're forced to take trade credit at a stupid amount of application fee and high interest rates,
Yeah.
you get on that death mill, if you like. You know, you've got credit card debt, you've got store credit debt, you've got money lender debt, and all of a sudden you're in a cycle you can't break. All right, so you've got to get ahead of that curve. You do not want to go there. Having an emergency fund is key. Having liquid assets in reserve, like shares that can be sold down, avoids you having to go into that death or debt cycle of having to borrow against market logic.
So just to round out our discussion today, what's your number one piece of advice, budgeting advice, in uncertain times that you wanted to share with the people out there?
Know about it before it happens. Plan for it before it happens. If you do a budget and you aren't planning for things that we have no idea will happen, loss of job, loss of health, loss of partner, loss of whatever, divorces, all these sorts of things. If you're not planning and preparing for those events, we pray they don't happen, but when they do, you've got to know how to react. Otherwise, you're forced into a very ugly cycle of borrowing.
Dr. Steve, I want to thank you again, as always, for speaking to us here, right here on Ticker. Just a quick reminder that the following information is for informative purposes only. Be sure to do your own research before making any major financial decisions.